To some, cemeteries are not the most inviting places to visit, but historians recognize a cemetery as a reflection of the community's past. The old Lorimer Cemetery was established in 1808 as a public burial ground and given to the city by Lewis Lorimer, the town's founder.
We're standing in Old Lorimer Cemetery today, which in my view is the most historic spot in Cape Girardeau. It's the center of history. It's the most documented area of Cape Girardeau's history. It's the burial place of the founder of Cape Girardeau, Lewis Lorimer, and his wife. A number of famous people, significant people to the development of the town. This was a high hill located north of Cape Girardeau, and Lorimer donated this to the city in perpetuity as a resting place for the town's residents. In 1808, his wife Charlotte died and was brought here to this high hill north of Cape Girardeau. They actually brought her upriver on a boat. Landed on the riverfront. We're about a mile or a mile and a quarter north of Cape Girardeau. They carried her up the low area just behind the cemetery to the south, up the hill, and Lorimer wrote that he returned her to her people. So if you think about this, this has been a burial place for over 200 years. There are about 1,200 tombstones that mark the early settlers and residents of the community. But there may be as many as 9,000 people buried here. And in this community, or in this cemetery, are the founders and the developers of the community. We have not only the Lorimers, but we have a Senator Alexander Buckner, who died in a cholera epidemic in the 1830s. Here is buried Lewis Houck, the historian and economic developer of the community, his family members. Right behind me is the tombstone of Lewis Cheney, the first president of the normal school at Cape Girardeau. And I love this stone because here is a president of the university who was an archaeologist and killed in a cave-in while doing archaeological research. And on his tombstone it simply says, "A teacher." Just close to us is the gravestone of Uriah Brock, a Revolutionary War soldier. Just a few feet from us is the second cousin of George Washington, the Lewis family. That family has played an important role in Cape Girardeau's history. Just to the south is the tombstone of Robert Sturtevant, banker, prominent developer, probably the most significant, the costliest tombstone in the cemetery. We have Joseph Landsman, the builder of Old St. Vincent Church, of the Common Pleas Courthouse, of the first normal school building on the campus here in Cape Girardeau in 1875. The cemetery tells us a lot about who we are as a community because they separated Protestants from Catholics. In the western part of the cemetery, identified by the crosses and the Catholic markers, is really the Catholic section of the cemetery, separated by an arch and a walkway. Protestants here on the east, Catholics on the west. So they separated individuals in this life in order to promote their separation, I suppose, in the afterlife. Very reflective of the 19th century. If you had visited Old Lorimer Cemetery in the 1880s, this is how much of it would have looked. The stones were close together. There was no empty space in the cemetery in the 1870s and 1880s. The stones simply occupied and filled this spot. Over the years, they have been lost, they've been broken. We have about 1,200 tombstones here. Probably 70% of them have been damaged by vandalism, by trees, by lawnmowers, just by neglect. The cemetery was almost lost. It was overgrown, neglected, abandoned as the city moved to the west and to the south. Here we have a number of individuals who moved on from Cape Girardeau and became famous. Best example of that, in my view, is William Scripps and his consort Grace and their daughter. One of the most unusual stones architecturally in the cemetery. And William Scripps, who moved here from London in 1791. Think about the transition for that individual who moved from London, England to Cape Girardeau 30 years before this was a state, settled here. His family moved on to Rushville, Illinois, where there is today a Scripps Library, and into California. And the Scripps family is connected to the Scripps Howard newspaper and the Scripps Institute of Oceanography in California. So here is a family of great significance to Cape Girardeau and to the nation. The architecture of the tombstones, it reflects the time period in which the burials occurred, and certainly at the end of the 19th century and early 20th century, when we were seeing obelisk built nationwide, we have a small obelisk built here in this cemetery. And if you look to the south and to the west, you see a number of obelisks that sort of reflect the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C. That's the style they're trying to emulate. These are monuments that are expensive. They were imported, brought in from the East at great cost to the families, but they make a statement. They're pointing to heaven, and that was the style and that was the fashion of the time. It's important for us to maintain and preserve these stones that are left, to maintain the site, the tree, the settings, the overlook of the river. It's such a historic place. It's such a beautiful place. It's a place that tells us who we are as a community.
Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Discover Cape. Each month we will take this journey where there are many places to go, there are many interesting people to meet, and so many new things to discover. Join us again as we discover Cape.